The language you folks are about to hear is some very vulgar language, not language I approve of, and is not safe for your workplace, and is more than likely not safe for young children to hear. These are words straight from Joe Biden's mouth on Senate floor. Warning.
We already have a nigger mayor. We don't need any more nigger big shots.
Well, that one was interesting, wasn't it? How about we hear him again, on the floor again, a different time, talking about how he wants black people removed off the streets.
Take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. Tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. We have no choice but to take them out of society. We must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist, and we must deal with that.
That's right, folks. That's the Joe Biden, the Operation Mockingbird media, CNN, MSN, all the mainstream media like to hide and lie to you and tell you Donald Trump's racist. Has Donald ever said anything like this? Because we would have seen the footage by now, right? Let's keep going.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
So that's who the liberals have been cheating in an election to vote for. Yes, I said cheated. You've been caught all over, evidence all over. Project Veritas, prove him wrong. Try and lie about him. He will sue your pants off like everybody else that lies about him. It's time to end Operation Mockingbird. Bye, CNN.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump.
Vice President Biden, with all due respect, your latest comments are both pathetic and hurtful. Your quote, "If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, you ain't black." Well, I think that in civil discourse, we can have our disagreements on politics, but you challenging me and millions of other people out there on their blackness, descendants of slaves, from you, is some seriously condescending, out of touch bullcrap. You're embarrassing yourself, Mr. Vice President. Should you even be running for president in the Democratic Party that says they're for black people? Do you really believe that black people are owned by the Democratic Party? Do you really believe that a black person who doesn't vote for you is therefore not legitimately black? Have you forgotten the Republican Party was started in opposition for a Democratic Party that thought it was people? I am a man, Mr. Vice President, Too many people have died for me to have the right to think and vote for myself. But I wonder if Senator Peters agrees with you. I bet he does. When I get the chance to debate him, I think I'll ask. You should think long and hard about what you said and what it means. And also, your use of the word ain't. You should also make sure you carry hot sauce in your purse next time.
Now, let's hear Joe in 2020 say he will not apologize for previous comments he's made and then lie and say he's always been for civil liberties. After what you've just heard, does it sound like he's for civil liberties?
Are you going to apologize like Cory Booker
Apologize
has called
for what?
Cory Booker's called for it.
Cory should apologize. He knows better. There's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career.
Now, let's hear Joe in 2020 say he will not apologize for previous comments he's made and then lie and say he's always been for civil liberties. After what you've just heard, does it sound like he's for civil liberties?
They're going to put you all back in chains.
But wait. There's more.
My son is Attorney General a year in Iraq, came back, and that's one of the things that he finds was most in need. When he was over there in Iraq for a year, people would come to him and talk about what was happening to them at home in terms of foreclosures, in terms of bad loans that were these Shylocks who took advantage of these women and men.
No. We're not done yet. One more.
The culture, our culture is not imported from some African nation or some Asian nation. It's our English jurisprudential culture, our European culture.
What was 1776 about then, Joe? To get away from the European culture of lies, slavery, racism. So now, let's take a second to listen to Joe Biden admitting that he wrote the Patriot Act, the wiretapping, and the ability to declare any American a terrorist.
Libertarians were opposed to it right after 1994, and you can ask the Attorney General this because I got a call when he introduced the Patriot Act. He said, Joe, I'm introducing the act basically as you wrote it in 1994. It was defeated then not by any liberals. It was defeated then by the folks who worried that we'd have the Minutemen would get in trouble, by the Mr. Barrs of the world who were worried about the right wing, not anything else. So that has nothing to do with you all, but just to set the record straight. Almost the same thing that got passed, the Patriot Act, was introduced by me in 1994, and it was the right wing that defeated it. You guys tried to help get it passed, including the wiretap changes and the rest. So
good, because we have a vote on it. I wouldn't.
That's right. He called William Barr, who is now Attorney General, defending America and fending off these liberal Operation Mockingbird liars. Called him a terrorist. Alright, we're going to go back in time a little bit here. Around the time Joe was wanting to push the Patriot Act, remember the Oklahoma bombing? Yes. This is one of those things that are in regard to that. Why he wanted to be able to tap your phones and spy on you.
But if an emergency wiretap is good enough for John Gotti, why is it not good enough for the Unabomber? The emergency wiretap is good enough for John Gotti. Why is it not good enough for some wacko who blows up or is about to blow up a federal building in Wilmington, Delaware, or Washington, D.C.?
Delaware, Mr. Biden moves to recommit the conference report on the bill at 7:35 to the Committee of Conference.
We've got criminal alien removal procedures. When these criminal aliens get convicted, The minute their conviction, their sentence is over, we get them out of this country. So they can't just waltz out of the jail and go and start doing further terrorist activities.
Mr. President. Senator from Utah is recognized for 15 minutes.
And over the past month, we've worked in a bipartisan manner to craft what will surely be the toughest anti-terrorism bill ever to become law. This week, to honor the memory of those who suffered in Oklahoma, the Congress will send to President Clinton this landmark bipartisan anti-terrorism bill. It has the support of the Republican governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, and Oklahoma's Democrat Attorney General, Drew Edmondson.
That objection so ordered.
Okay, in these next clips, I'm going to show you where the CIA had even admitted to secrets, and people came forward saying they were offered money, millions, to carry out the attack. I'm even going to show you the CIA website and their documents. Okay, here is one website, newspunch.com, about a Cody Snodgrass claims that the CIA offered him $1 million to carry out the attack. You can go look this stuff up. I'm showing you the site. Here, back in 2010, ruling reveals CIA involvement in Oklahoma bombing investigation. You can go look up this site on Desert. I guess Desert News. It's a really long title. But here we go. CIA.gov library. You can come here too and look. Oklahoma bombing on 4/20/1995. Secrets. 5 men were involved directly. 3 actually delivered the bomb. All Arabic. Chemical bomb named Carl. Did you know that? Seemed like, Operation Mockingbird to control the media. Joe, was you in on that? You're an Operation Mockingbird, aren't you? Seems like your history in government has been crime after crime after crime, and involved in these crimes. Clintons, NDAA, Patriot Act, and then you call William Barr a terrorist. Interesting. In this next video here, this is back on 9/11, and I want you to listen to the things Joe is telling the news lady. I'm going to point out now where he mentions about how the enemies, and then to look at all enemies, even pathogens, and anthrax, before anthrax even came out. The attacks, remember those, way after 9/11? What's going on, folks?
We have to be on a war footing. Senator Hagel has said that we've got to start securing our borders, locking down our airports, revisiting the way we protect our public institutions. What about that?
I hope that's not true. I would say it another way. I would say we've come face to face with a new reality. A reality that we knew existed and we knew was possible. A reality that has happened in varying degrees in other countries. But if, in fact, in order to respond to that reality, we have to alter our civil liberties, change the way we function, then we have truly lost the war. The war is one that allows us the way to conduct the war is to demonstrate our institutions are functioning, that your civil liberties, your civil rights, your ability to be free and walk and move around, in fact, are not fundamentally altered. Anybody who's willing to strap dynamite to their body or have a suicide kamikaze mission, you'll never fundamentally be able to stop. It doesn't matter what you do. There are a lot of things we can do, though, to diminish significantly the possibility of this happening again without changing our character as a nation.
He just said we can't let it lock down our country and change the way we are. But what is he saying nowadays about COVID? Don't want to say it the right way because, well, I'll get all kinds of tagged. We'll call it beer flu. So, what's going on today in 2020 with all the Democrats and him wanting to lock down the country, change the way things are?
Well, it's an amazing scene here, Peter. The skies are clear. There are usually planes in the sky. The skies are clear over the Capitol. The streets are completely empty. There is still smoke rising up from the Pentagon where the plane hit the Pentagon earlier. And as you can see, the members of Congress are all trying to grapple with what to do next. Senator Biden, of course, is going to be receiving all kinds of security briefings.
Linda, I have a question, if I may.
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
I have a question for the Senator. I apologize via you. The Senator is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, so he is party to all of the information in the intelligence community. Was the intelligence community so taken up with the idea of chemical and biological warfare against the United States that they didn't pay enough attention to this possibility?
Now, this is a part where we should listen a little close, where he mentions about the pathogens and chemicals and stuff about possibilities. Listen close.
Well, they clearly understood this was a possibility. The problem has been we have been focusing, in my view, I don't want to second guess anybody here. Look, the prospect of a chemical, biological, pathogen probability is real. Some of us, literally as recently as yesterday, I spoke to the National Press Club and talked about the fact that it's just as easy to fly from National Airport into the White House as it is to, do the same thing in New York. I mean, look, we know all these possibilities exist. And one of the things we have to do is we have to get our priorities straight in terms of what the real threats are that face us and use the assets we have to begin to deal with those threats. What I don't want everybody to think is this is some worldwide conspiracy where there's tens of thousands of people who are part of this army that attacked us. This is a group of people who are very well organized, obviously are relatively well funded, and we have to figure out how their network is worked, but we have to penetrate it. But it's
how they have to penetrate their network. And then in this next part's talking about how we shouldn't lock down the country because that's how they win the wars. But what's going on, Joe, with today? Why are you bending to the media in China to lock down the country and the world?
This is not, we can't, Peter, just say we're going to focus only on this kind of incident and not on chemical and not on biological and not on pathogens, not on anthrax. This, in a sense, is the most god-awful wake-up call we've ever had.
Senator, let me ask
how
you
we have to redirect our resources.
Let me ask you one more question, then. I didn't realize you could hear me. At the Pentagon and at the State Department, you already hear people doing what they almost always do in an instance like this. This is so sophisticated it must be Osama bin Laden. Maybe so, but is the United States too focused on one man?
The tendency in these circumstances is to be too focused on one man, one idea, one prospect. I think that we should be calm. Those of us who hold high public office, just calm down a little bit, collect our thoughts, collect the information, and in a methodical way analyze what we know happened and what we can derive from that. I think it's much too early for us to make those kinds of judgments. The first thing is what the president is doing. He called for calm, he's getting in the airplane, he's coming back to Washington, D.C., and I applaud him for that. and we should be back up and running as quickly as we can. And I think we should do this. This cannot be dealt with overnight. It's an incredible tragedy. But it's the new threat of the 21st century that we are now facing. And we're going to find a way to deal with it. This nation is too big, too strong, too united, too much a power in terms of our cohesion and our values to let this break us apart. And it won't happen.
And he said it won't happen. It just won't happen. Sure seemed like it was a way to roll out your Patriot Act, don't it? Kind of seems like some people were behind helping roll out the Patriot Act. One of my previous videos there, I covered Operation Mockingbird and how it's all about controlling the media and controlling the people. What about scaring them? Okay, in this next video, I'm going to show you guys is from the Corbett Report on his extensive research that he did into the CIA connection and the leading up to 9/11. So here are some hints to go watch his video that is called, which he's the Corbett Report, but it is called The Osama Myth Exposed. It's a really good video, and it's worth your time to watch the whole thing.
Question remains, do the bin Laden family connections to the highest circles of power in the American political establishment have any relevance to the story of Osama bin Laden? Is there any evidence that American intelligence was involved with Osama himself over the years? During Operation Cyclone, the US government funded the Afghan Mujahideen in their struggle against the Soviets in the largest covert operation in CIA history to that date. An estimated $5 billion in arms and funding were supplied to the jihadis, including Stinger anti-aircraft missiles and other equipment that kept the Soviet Red Army bogged down in the country for years. Officially, the CIA's contact was limited to the Afghans themselves, and no funding was given to the so-called Arab Afghans like Osama bin Laden, the Muslims from the Arab world who came to Afghanistan to aid in the fight against the Soviets. In reality, however, CIA funds were being funneled to the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence service that distributed those funds to the Arab Afghans through an organization called MAK, or the Bureau of Services. Osama bin Laden was the one in charge of MAK's finances. This much was admitted by Osama's brother Salem in 1985, who confessed that Osama was the liaison between the US, the Saudi government, and the Afghan rebels at the time. In 1986, Salem asked the Pentagon for anti-aircraft missiles on Osama's behalf. The former chief of the US Visa Bureau in Jeddah, Michael Springman, has testified that during his time there, he was repeatedly ordered by CIA officials to approve visas for bin Laden's Mujahideen cohorts so that they could be provided training at US military bases. 11 of the 19 alleged 9/11 hijackers would go on to get their visas from the same consulate. FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds has admitted that in her time at the FBI, she saw proof that the US had maintained a very intimate relationship with bin Laden all the way through the 1990s, up to September 11th. The Guardian reported that Osama had traveled to the American hospital in Dubai for kidney dialysis treatment in July 2001. While there, he was visited by the local CIA station chief. When the CIA official later boasted about having met Osama bin Laden, he was promptly recalled to Washington.
Wait, CIA met with him before attack and then was called to Washington? That's interesting.
In a July 2005 article in The Guardian, Robin Cook, the former Speaker of the British House of Commons, asserted that the name Al-Qaeda itself actually referred to a database containing CIA assets from the Afghan Mujahideen struggle. Even Osama's alleged responsibility for the 9/11 events has been repeatedly called into question. In the weeks after 9/11, the Taliban offered to hand bin Laden over if the US provided proof that he was connected to the attack. Bush turned the offer down.
Why would Bush want to turn this offer down? If they knew. Or maybe, dude, they know who really did it and didn't want to turn in the wrong guy.
After the invasion of Afghanistan began in October, the Taliban again tried to hand him over, this time dropping the request for proof of bin Laden's guilt. Bush again refused. After video of what the Pentagon alleged was Osama bin Laden confessing to the 9/11 attacks emerged in December 2001, a German national news program conducted its own investigation into the tape. According to its own independent translators, every single point in the video that the Pentagon alleges indicate Osama's foreknowledge or complicity in the 9/11 attack has been mistranslated, and they claim that the video does not, in fact, provide any proof of confession.
But why would the news and media want to mistranslate what was said? Or the government? Because they don't want you guys to know about Operation Mockingbird and controlling you, your thoughts, who you vote for?
Famously, FBI spokesman Rex Toom told investigative journalist Ed Haas that the FBI did not include 9/11 on bin Laden's most wanted profile because there was no hard evidence connecting him to the crime.
Listen close here to something he points out about the media, Operation Mockingbird media, quickly telling you what to think, who it was, who to blame, who to hate. Pay attention, people.
Within the first minute of TV coverage of the second plane hitting the World Trade Center on 9/11, Osama bin Laden was named as the likely perpetrator of the event. This idea solidified into a near certainty within hours, and the 24/7 news coverage shifted almost immediately to the question of when the US would invade Afghanistan. In an interview the day after 9/11, confronted with this tendency of the press to jump to conclusions about Osama's involvement, ex-CIA station chief Milt Bearden made some unexpected statements about the supposed terrorist mastermind.
Okay, now those that have been catching on to the CIA, Operation Mockingbird, media lies, listen again here on what's coming. Gets interesting. They put us on the chopping block.
Well, Milt Bearden, again, you're one of our most experienced people with long experience in Afghanistan. What does your gut tell you about who's responsible for these attacks this week?
My gut tells me we don't know the answer yet. My gut tells me that I'm not going to go with the first answer that comes to mind, but that there's quite possibly something else out there. Experts will jump on you and say it's Osama bin Laden's MO. He's the only one that is capable of this type of coordinated attack. My answer to them is he's the only one you know that's capable of this kind of attack. This was a tremendously sophisticated operation against the United States. More sophisticated than anybody would ever have ascribed to Osama bin Laden. I think we need to do a little homework. We need to appoint a team B that looks for somebody else. I'm just not convinced it was bin Laden.
There's no question in my mind that you're skeptical that Osama bin Laden, aided and abetted, or at least protected by the Taliban, should be the principal target of some large military operation. If I'm wrong about that, tell me now.
No, you're not wrong, Dan. I'm saying is, let me step back one step on this and say Osama bin Laden is an evil man, and he's a component of the terrorism that we're dealing with across the board. All I'm saying is that I think Osama bin Laden has become the metaphor for the entire problem of terrorism involving Muslims with perceived grievances against the United States. And I think it would be wrong to say this is a one-size-fits-all operation and to go after bin Laden, because an operation as sophisticated as carried out yesterday was an operation that was concealed from us for months, probably, before it took place. It happened without essentially a hitch except for one aircraft. And there is no reason to believe that these same people weren't capable of covering their tracks somehow on the way out. Now, I would go so far as to say that this group who was responsible for that If they didn't have an Osama bin Laden out there, they'd invent one, because he's a terrific diversion for the rest of the world.
As I stated earlier in the video, who was funding millions to people to carry out the Oklahoma City bombing? In their own documents, and they funded 5 Arabs?
And now, in May of 2011, after Osama bin Laden has been allegedly tracked down and allegedly shot by a Navy SEAL team, after $1 trillion and 2 wars have been waged in the name of fighting his shadowy, non-existent terror organization, as the very fabric of our society itself has been torn asunder in the never-ending hunt for the terrorist boogeymen under our collective bed, perhaps it's time to ask once again what Osama bin Laden means to us, after all. If one were to base their understanding of Osama bin Laden solely on mainstream media coverage of him over the last 10 years, a very different picture would emerge to the one with which you have just been presented. This media-constructed image would be one of a radical Muslim who appeared out of nowhere in the 1990s to begin a string of increasingly devastating terror attacks on American targets. After masterminding the 9/11 attacks in some undefined manner from a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, he supposedly outwitted and outmaneuvered the combined might of the most powerful military and the most technologically sophisticated intelligence dragnet in the history of the world for an entire decade, all the while releasing video and audio tapes from his secret compound to taunt his would-be captors. Finally, we are told, he was tracked down and shot in a Special Forces raid during which live video transmissions were inexplicably unavailable and then buried at sea before his death could be confirmed by any independent third party. What emerges from this official Osama bin Laden story is not a person, but a comic book villain. A faceless, mysterious, motivationless embodiment of terrorism with all the reality of a Lex Luthor or Cobra Commander. His is a powerful myth, made all the more powerful because it has been constructed and promoted by the very politicians and string pullers who claim to be opposing him. Like Orwell's Emmanuel Goldstein, his face can be put before the public from time to time to produce the 2-minute hate, a cathartic projection of anger upon an empty image. We know to hiss when his picture is dangled before us, and cheer when we are told he is dead. But always, always it is stressed that he is fearsome, that he is ruthless, and that the only way to stop him is to surrender our rights and freedoms. Even in death, we are told, he and the mythical army of devotees he supposedly ruled over are a clear and present danger to our society, necessitating the continuation of the never-ending wars against abstract nouns, TSA agents groping children at the airports, and extrajudicial no-fly lists that are turning into no-ride lists and no-buy lists. The only thing we can say for certain is that the Osama bin Laden character has now been disposed of in a far-fetched burial story only fitting of his cartoonish myth.
Now do you people see what's going on around the world? What's happening to us? The lies, the deception, Operation Mockingbird, news, media. Biden's in on it. He's not your friend. He's been there the whole time, stabbing us in the back with his racist comments.
And now the public is already being prepared for his replacement myths, a gaggle of similarly cartoonish characters no less connected to the Western intelligence establishment. But after finally waking from the 10-year nightmare of the Osama bin Laden fable, are the public willing to go straight back to sleep? Or are they going to start questioning the official narratives that are cemented into place in the wake of every large-scale event?
And bam, that was the key word. Are you going to wake up to the official narratives? I doubt it. You gonna put on your mask?
Narratives that always support more government intrusion in our lives, expanded wars of aggression around the globe, and an ever-expanding police state. It's an important question, and one that must be answered quickly, while the public is still wary and skeptical of a government that has lied to them time and time again, and then refuses to provide that public with a single credible shred of proof.
A government that has lied to us time and time again. People don't see we're being attacked. You were all bred to think Trump was racist. Not one clip in 5 years has been uploaded or anywhere seen on the internet of him being racist. But you bought the official narrative, your fact checks. Now look what you're at in this world. You're being silenced, and you're too ignorant to wake up.
Take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. Tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. We have no choice but to take them out of society. We must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exists, and we must deal with that.
Now, I'm going to show you folks who the real Joe Biden is and his plans for America. And you all better wake up ASAP. You ever heard of Rex 84? Readiness Exercise 1984? Joe was there to help draft up and write that stuff, where it uses black people and Mexicans to create chaos and riots in America so they could roll out the military and then throw you in FEMA camps and detention centers that Obama built while he was in office, called re-education camps.
Congress shall now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, I'm sorry, this section is classified, dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified. Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified. This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified, with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape, are released or otherwise become uncontrollable. Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strength. Should event occur in urban areas, Jesus, that's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed classified, body disposal actions shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers. A new Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your votes.
Did you hear that man at the end? He was starting to cry.
Our soldiers are trustworthy. They can deploy in the homeland, and American citizens can be confident that there will be no abuses.
Matt Rothschild.
Well, you know, that doesn't really satisfy me, and I don't think it should satisfy your listeners and your audience, Amy, because, you know, our people in the field in Iraq, some of them have not behaved up to the highest standards, and a lot of police forces in the United States who've been using these tasers have used them inappropriately. The whole question here about what the Pentagon is doing, patrolling in the United States, gets to a real heart of the matter, which is, do we have a democracy here? I mean, there is a law in the books called the Posse Comitatus Act and the Insurrection Act that says that the President of the United States as Commander-in-Chief cannot put the military on our streets. And this is a violation of that, it seems to me. President Bush tried to get around this act a couple years ago in a Defense Authorization Act that he signed that got rid of some of those restrictions. And then last year in the new Defense Authorization Act, thanks to the work of Senator Patrick Leahy and Kit Bond of Missouri, that was stripped away, and so the president isn't supposed to be using the military in this fashion. And though the president, true to form, appended a signing statement to that saying he's not going to be governed by that. So here we have a situation where the president of the United States has been aggrandizing his power, and this gives him a whole brigade unit to use against U.S. citizens here at home.
Now, the violence that we had in the 60s was limited, but the next time, it will be unlimited, because the violence in the 60s was a struggle for human dignity and for human rights. The next struggle will be a struggle for survival, and it will not just be limited to black people or black against white, but it will be the poor people, the masses of the people in the country struggling for the right to live, for the right to survive.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. You know, we become responsible then for administrating, you know, 250 million people. And there was no answers. No one had given any thought to economics. How are you going to clothe and feed these people? The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States. They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill. 25 million people. Now, I want you to imagine sitting in a room with 25 people, most of which have graduate degrees from Columbia and other well-known educational centers, and hear them figuring out the logistics for the elimination of 25 million people. And they were dead serious.
I have to come back and tell my people they finna fuck us. When you go home into your 2012, understand they already have concentration camps in the United States of motherfucking America that they've been building for 4 years now. And the question is, who in the fuck is you finna put in there?
The King Alfred Plan. This program actually details the arrest, detention, encampment, and extermination of the black and Hispanic or Latino population of this country. Don't say it can't happen, people. Don't say it can't, because on February 21st, 1942, Executive Order 9066 was implemented. And on February 21st, 1942, every Japanese American in this country was arrested and detained. And the law stated if they were 1/16 Japanese, they were to be locked up too. When the Japanese, the war, World War II. Don't say it can't be done.
This next video here is a FEMA training camp video. It's kind of old, very pixelated. Sorry.
Occupational specialty, internment resettlement specialist. This MOS plays an integral role in providing a uniform system of handling prisoners and detainees. First and always, these MPs are combat support soldiers trained to fight. Then also trained as internment resettlement specialists to control and supervise detainees, to ensure their humane treatment, and to assist them in returning to a productive life. For this job, the Army will train you to use specialized equipment to monitor activity, to conduct searches, and to inspect areas where prisoners work and live. Here, you'll train to in-process prisoners and detainees, and to brief them on their rights. In addition, you'll train to inventory and secure their property, take photographs and fingerprints, issue personal items, and assign cells. You'll train to conduct prisoner formations and roll calls, to monitor their exercise, recreation, and work areas, to prepare and maintain records, and develop written reports. After your initial entry training and advanced individual training, you'll work long hours, day or night, in a garrison or field environment, where you may practice emergency procedures, detect and confiscate contraband, and escort prisoners outside the facility. Serving in this MOS can help you transition from the military to the civilian employment sector. In the Military Police Corps, you'll be providing both combat support and law enforcement wherever you go, always upholding our motto, of the troops and for the troops. Military Occupational Specialty, Internment Resettlement Specialist.
It's not meant to depress you, it's meant to make you aware. It's not meant to make you walk out of here feeling like there's no hope. It's meant to make you walk out of here saying, I got to get busy, and informing my brothers and sisters what's really going on, so that we can prepare ourselves for what is coming. The information that I'm going to share with you, personally, I have researched it along with many of my colleagues, and we found a lot of this information in the United States Library of Congress. A lot of this information has finally been declassified after being held away from the masses, or kept back from the masses after many years. Because of the satanic, evil, and clandestine objectives contained in this program called the King Alfred Plan, it is imperative, it's necessary that those people whom God has called to be watchmen and watchwomen on the wall alert the people. There's a passage in the scripture that says, woe unto the watchman that sees danger coming and don't say nothing, because then the blood of the people will be on their hands. But when the watchman on the wall proclaims and cries loud and spares not and lifts up their voice, as the scripture says, as a trumpet in Zion, to show the people what's happening, if the people still fall for it, then the blood is off of the watchman's hands. So today, as the watchman on the wall, it's my duty to inform y'all of some stuff that you might not know about. Do my best, Doc. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back approximately 40 years ago. Between the years of 1960 and 1964, an organization called the National Security Council. Have y'all ever heard of that before? I know you have, because we talk about national security memorandums. Well, the National Security Council developed a government program called the King Alfred Plan. This program actually details the arrest, detention, encampment, and extermination of the black and Hispanic or Latino population of this country. No other race of people have had a program written for them but the black, and of course in 1984 it was amended to include the Hispanic population. President Reagan, along with the ex-director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Louis Goffredo, proposed this amendment in 1984, on April 6th of 1984, and hence you have the additional code name Rex 84. It's important that you understand, brothers and sisters, why this program has been put in place. You need to understand the drastic measures that have been strategically designed for our destruction. It's important that you understand, brothers and sisters, why this program has been put in place. You need to understand the drastic measures that have been strategically designed for our destruction. Let's see what's going to happen here. They didn't write this, brothers and sisters, without a plan to make it happen. Let me say that one more time. They did not go through the trouble of writing this without a plan to pull it off. The King Alfred Plan, the United States of America King Alfred Plan, code named Rex 84. Here's what it says, and I'm going to read quickly. In the event of widespread and continuing and coordinated racial disturbances in the United States, King Alfred, at the discretion of the president, underline that and then look at the person next and say, this is why no black man can be the president. You got to understand, people, this program was written for black people. They ain't gonna, hey, listen, I don't know. What's Secretary of State's name? Colin Powell. I don't know. He seems to be a little disgruntled, but when you got people like that, supporting the white agenda, you know, it makes you wonder. They might be able to put somebody who looks black in the Oval Office. It says, at the discretion of the president, King Alfred is to be put into action when? In other words, when the president of the United States, not Congress, not the House, not the Senate, not the House of Representatives, not the Senate, when the president declares this emergency, it's to be implemented immediately. Participating federal agencies, what are they? National Security Council, what else? Central Intelligence Agency, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Department of Interior. Participating state agencies, what are they? National Guard units, state police. Participating local agencies are what? City police and county police, that's right. Now, one of the things you need to understand, brothers, let me make this notation before we read further. In addition to the law enforcement agencies that we just mentioned, in 1982, there was a guy named Oliver North. Y'all have heard of him, right? Oliver North and Ronald Reagan got together, and the two of them amended the King Alfred Plan. And their amendment became known as Rex 84 because it was signed by Ronald Reagan in 1984. Now, the original plan was signed by Lyndon Baines Johnson, but Ronald Reagan amended it to include the Hispanic population. Originally, it was, what we're going to read, it was just written for blacks. But in 1984, Oliver North and Ronald Reagan amended it to include the Hispanic and Latino population. What's really deep, brothers and sisters, is this. The neo-Nazi groups, this is all a part of the amendment in 1984. The neo-Nazi groups in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, along with state militia groups, like the Missouri militia, the Michigan militia, the Minnesota militia, all of these white paramilitary groups that have their training grounds out in the woods and stuff, that y'all, I'm sure y'all know about that, right? I hope you know about that. Well, the amendment in 1984 was written to include them automatically being deputized when the president declares the emergency. And all of these other groups will be deputized by the federal government to round up blacks and Hispanics for encampment. This is not good news, brothers and sisters. I'm not here to make you feel good today. I'm here to make you aware today. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Now, brothers and sisters, if y'all are thinking for a moment that there's going to be worldwide empathy or sympathy for us, don't think that. Now, I'm going to tell you why I say that, y'all. Because y'all remember when James Baker was Secretary of State? Well, James Baker developed a policy with Russia and Canada. These other governments have created what's called a United States European base to exterminate blacks and Latinos in Africa, South America, the East and West Indies, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. I mean, they're working. Why? Why are we targeted? Think about that. I mean, they're working. Why? Why are we targeted? Think about that.
This next clip's from Sky News. This is what's coming to America under Joe Biden. All the evidence is on the table. Hunter, the laptop, the connections. Another reason why they would have been attacking Trump.
When Sky News visited Xinjiang in September, the power of China's police state was clear. These were the visible signs of an intense crackdown by Chinese authorities. But it's behind the walls of these detention centers that crackdown is felt most. The Chinese government has sent more than 1 million Uyghurs, a Muslim minority ethnic group, to centers like this for what it calls voluntary job training. US officials have previously described them as concentration camps, and newly leaked cables reinforce reports that they are centers for forced ideological and behavioral re-education.
What really stood out from the document is that right away the #1 priority is to prevent those quote-unquote students from escaping. The end game is to change an entire minority population. It's a cultural genocide and it's a coercive social re-engineering.
The documents came from an anonymous source, and the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists verified them by consulting experts, cross-checking content and comparing signatures. They describe an elaborate scoring system that grades detainees on how well they speak Mandarin, memorize ideology and adhere to strict rules.
We had to talk to a speaker to get permission to go to the toilet, and there were 10 minutes of toilet time each hour for all of us. Some of us were able to go in this time, and some weren't. We didn't waste water to wash our hands. We had 2 minutes to shower with cold water each month.
They would tell us that we were poisoned by religion, that Islam is an infectious disease, that it came from abroad, that if there needed to be a religion in China, then it must be Buddhism.
The papers also show how Beijing is pioneering a new form of social control using data and artificial intelligence. Drawing on data collected by mass surveillance technology, computers issued the names of tens of thousands of people for interrogation or detention in just 1 week. China has denied the claims. Last week, its ambassador to the United Kingdom called them fake news.
I'm telling you what the so-called document you're talking about is a pure fabrications. Don't listen to fake news. Don't listen to fabrications.
A rare comment from China on the detention centers. But as more details emerge of what goes on here, more questions will be asked of the international community to look closer. Kimberly Leonard, Sky News.
I'm going to end this video off there. This is pretty much going to be, I would hope, enough evidence for people to see with Operation Mockingbird who Biden really is and why Trump was really important to America. All the media lies that have ever been told about him, do you liberals still believe it now? Where is any footage of Trump ever being racist? Where's any real footage of him in the big elite? There isn't. You can't find it because he's not. You can find repeated footage of Trump saying he's not in those clubs and he don't like those dirty people. It's time to wake up, America, and help get the rest of the world awake, because we are the last hope for the world.